spoilers? Oh, lots and lots of spoilers.
Hoot mon, och, aye, crivens, pass the haggis and so forth, you great spalpeen. I'll gie you what for. Have a taste of hate, you scunner. Okay, I'll stop that now.
Did that hurt?
It kind of did. As you may have guessed, this week on Max Mike Movies, we continue our series Pixar Pix, and this week we've picked a Pixar pick full of pickled peppers.
No, we didn't.
Not really. No. No, we're discussing 2012's Brave, Pixar's first and, so far, if I'm right, the only foray into the princess genre. So beloved by their benevolent and iron white-gloved overlord Disney. Being Pixar, they don't exactly follow the Disney blueprint. Or do they?
Dun dun dun.
No, they really don't. Sorry, I mean spoilers. They don't.
Oh.
Yes, sorry. I am your kosher-kilted host, Max Levine, and over there, pinned under a badly tossed caber, is your other host, Mike MacLoose.
Ow. Ow.
Yeah,
caber hurt.
Get the caber off you. Oh, come on, they're just those little things you put in salads.
No, they're telephone poles. Because somehow the Scots, in a mist of Scotch delusion, said, hey, you know, it would be fun, let's lift that tree, and let's see who can throw it once over at least, and win.
Sure, because we hate ourselves.
Hey, oh no, I got one. So pick up the heaviest rock you can find, right?
Yep,
and I'm going to string this pole between these two trees. You need to heave that rock up over your head, behind you, over the rope to win. No, not straight up so it might come down on your head, but back over your head and over the... Yeah.
That's why the official emblem of Scotland is the hernia. But before we get any hernias here, we've got some business. You can, of course, check us out at our website, maxmikemovies.com, for our entire back catalog of hits, streaming back over 50 weeks ago. You can also, of course, find us on your favorite podcast app, the Google Podcast app, or you can find us on the Apple Podcast app. You can also find us on Spotify and iHeartRadio.
Oh.
And by the way, on iHeartRadio, we are apparently big in Finland. Seriously, I Googled us, and it's the iHeartRadio.fi site showed up, Finland.
Ooh,
the whole page
Finland.
is in Finnish.
I'd like to say a big hello to our Finnish friends. Hello, yes. Finnish friends.
Hello. Spotify. Yep. And you can, of course, email us with questions, comments, dark rituals, curses from beyond the seven seas.
Haggis recipes.
Yes, haggis recipes, or even perhaps some freeze-dried haggis at us at maxmikemovies.com.
Hey, I got a quick question for you.
Sure.
Kosher kilts, does that just depend on how you kill it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't bleed.
Okay, good.
And now we have a lot of trivia. Ooh, yes.
The show.
This one took 6 years. Not, a lot of them take a long time. Budget was about, they're never exactly specific on some of these, about $185 million. Worldwide gross, about $538 million. It's a success. It's not gigantic. It's not one of their colossal hits, but that, made 3 times their money.
It's no Coco.
No, it's no Coco. Yeah, and that's Coco Moco good.
It's going to live forever. Especially that Coco.
This is also the first Pixar movie set entirely in the historic past. It's probably around the 12th century.
Sure.
There are, according at least to a couple of websites, there are indications of that era in both the way they dress and also, just a little thing, there's a chess set in Merida's room. That's the Lewis chessmen, which is one of the most, that they were unearthed in Scotland in 1831, and they're from the 12th century.
Yeah, somebody found a missing piece fairly recently. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh yeah, my grandma's had that forever. What do you mean your grandmother's had that? There's only one of them.
Yeah. Very famous. The original title of the movie was The Bear and the Bow. Not sure if that wouldn't have been better.
Yeah.
Most of the actors, with one notable exception, are all from the UK. A lot of them are from Scotland. One of them, Kevin McKidd, who plays Lord MacGuffin and Young MacGuffin, which is a great name, we'll get to that, was particularly happy to work on this project because he has a really thick, natural Scottish accent, and he always has to suppress it. This is like one of the first time in years he's been able to use it.
Wow.
Young MacGuffin, by the way, who is largely unintelligible to everyone else in the movie when he talks, he's speaking a real language. It's called Doric. It's a dialect of Scots English from northeastern Scotland, and including the part where Kevin McKidd is from, in Elgin.
You don't even have to go that high. I remember when we were in Glasgow in 1985, there was a point where I was playing an arcade game somewhere in Glasgow, as you do, and this kid came up to me and started talking to me. And I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. He said something again. I was like, I'm sorry. And finally, I just said, I'm sorry, I only speak English. And our friend Matt was with us at the time. He said, Mike, he is speaking English.
Yeah.
So,
we'll get to that too.
A
lot of the software for this movie was particularly impressive. The 2 additional programs had to be developed specifically for this movie over 3 years. One of them allowed the simulation of Merida's 1,500 strands of hair curls to move together with her movements. An entire software package just for her hair. They were so proud of the hair in this movie. Yeah,
we've achieved hair.
Yep. In the scene where Princess Merida and Queen Eleanor have a big fight, Dame Emma Thompson actually worked herself into an intense motherly rage and ad-libbed the line, "There'll be fire and sword if it's not set right." Apparently really intimidated Kelly MacDonald, I believe that was her name, who voices Merida. We do see there are some Pixar Easter eggs. The Pizza Planet truck is in this movie.
Oh, dear gods, really?
Yeah, it's in almost every full-length Pixar movie. It's in it's a carved thing in the witch's hut.
We got to the witch's hut, and it's like, I know there are Easter eggs here. I refuse to look for them.
Yeah, that's pretty much, how I felt. There's a bunch of firsts in this movie. This is the first Pixar animation movie to feature a female protagonist. She's also the only Pixar character to be an official Disney princess. What an honor.
Yay.
Merida is also the first Disney princess to have brothers, not to mention both parents, which is, that's really non-Disney. Both parents, and they live through the movie.
Hey, Disney, it works. The parents are fine. We have no problem with mom and dad.
You do not have to murder mom in every movie, okay?
Mom, don't go near the balcony. Ah!
Now, to be fair, later, when we had Tangled, Rapunzel, her parents were still alive. She just, they don't get any lines.
No.
It's also the first Disney princess not to have a love interest. There was a scene that got storyboarded where Merida gets interested in young MacGuffin, but they got rid of that because they really wanted to focus on the relationship between the mother and the daughter. She is also the first Disney princess not to be based on any pre-existing literary or historical character. She is technically the third Pixar protagonist not to have a love interest, after James Sullivan from Monsters, Inc. and Remy from Ratatouille. Unlike Sully and Remy, Merida doesn't have a sidekick or a sidekick with a love interest. While we do have the clan Macintosh, which is common in Scotland, and a well-known type of apple, here it's probably a reference to the Apple computer and to Steve Jobs. The movie's dedicated to him at the end. Merida, you notice, the only thing we ever see her eat are apples. And very often you just see her with an apple with one bite taken out of it, which is the Apple logo. This is true.
I didn't notice. It's fine. They hadn't owned them for a long time at that point, but whatever.
Disney Pixar actually registered and copyrighted the official tartan pattern of the Dunbrach clan, which is Merida's clan, with the Scottish Registrar of Tartans in 2012. I actually have all the colors here. I'm not going to read them. It's not very interesting. Castle Dunbrach. By the way, Dunbrach translates to brown badger.
Oh.
Yeah. There are also a couple of little shout-outs that only Scots would get. or mostly only Scots, would get. At one point, Merida gets really upset and says, "Jings crivens and help ma boab." This is a catchphrase from a famous Scottish comic strip called Urwillie, Urwullie, Wullie, a staple in Scotland since the early 1940s.
Ah.
Yeah, when Merida is putting together a tray with the enchanted cake she's going to give her mother, she puts a flower on the plate. The flower is a thistle. That is the official Scottish national emblem. By the way, Kelly MacDonald, who voices Merida, was in her 30s when she voiced the teenage Merida.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Now, of course, because this is a Pixar movie, everyone's favorite John Ratzenberger is in this. Did you figure out who he was?
No.
Yeah, it's because he's putting on a very fake, very heavy Scottish accent and doesn't have much of a line. He is Gordon the Guard, the one who loses half his mustache.
Ah.
That is, in fact, probably his least recognizable role in all of his characters.
Gracias. Gracias.
Yes, exactly. I think that's probably the one he has because that his line's only one word in the movie. I think he has a couple.
Yeah.
He's also one of the very few actors not from the UK. This is the seventh Pixar movie to win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. And it's also a bit of a Harry Potter reunion. Because we've got Kelly MacDonald is in it, Robbie Coltrane, Emma Thompson, and Julie Walters.
Who does Robbie Coltrane play?
I don't know.
Ah.
Kelly MacDonald was Helena Ravenclaw, the Ravenclaw ghost.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yes, by the way, it was originally not supposed to be an archery contest at the beginning to determine the suitor for Merida. It was supposed to be a haggis tossing contest.
You don't toss them, you eat them.
Yeah, I know, but apparently they thought it wasn't Scottish enough, but they eventually went with the archery contest.
Is that all your trivia?
That's all my trivia. There's a ton of other stuff, but
I have one little piece I'd like to throw in there.
Sure.
This is not the first. This is actually a continuation of a stream of Pixar movies that has absolutely nothing to do with Rogue Warfare 3. Did you know that?
Now that you mention it, yes, I really should have brought that up. It really doesn't fit anywhere into the continuity of the Rogue Warfare series.
To the best of my knowledge, it does not. And as far as I know, this is going to be a continuing trend with Pixar that they will not work in anything to do with Rogue Warfare 3. Hey, have you seen that movie, Max? I hear it's quite the thing.
Never say never.
Rogue Warfare. 3, yes. Plot that does not include Rogue Warfare.
Rogue Warfare, yes.
Someday they're going to send us a check.
They really, sure, yeah. They weren't going to send us a check initially. They were just going to send us some free copies of the movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, in ancient Scotland, Merida, teenage princess. Sorry.
Don't ever do that again.
I promise nothing. Firstborn of Clan du Broch is a fiercely independent spirit who takes after her wild warrior father Fergus rather than her calm and dignified mother Eleanor. Queen Eleanor is determined to turn Merida into a lady, a proper daughter of a clan leader, and hopes to marry her to the son of one of the other 3 great clans in hope of cementing peace in the land. Merida chafes at having her freedom taken from her and having her fate decided by others. She runs off and finds a woodcarver, and asks for a spell to change her mother. While Merida may mean that figuratively, the witch takes a more literal approach and gives Merida a spell that changes her mother and, by accident, her 3 little brothers into a bear. The very kind of beast that took Fergus's leg. A nasty, quasi-supernatural creature called Mordu, which means the Dark One, who makes several appearances in the movie. The transformation leads to a change in the relationship between mother and daughter, and both learn very important lessons, Greg. I'm sorry, I mean... They learn very important lessons, including how to unbear everyone who is not supposed to be a bear.
Well, one.
Well, no, she also unbears the 3 little boys get turned back.
Oh, yeah. I don't think they would have cared one way or the other. That's it for the plot, though, right?
Yep,
before we get to her. All right, so now we pause. The down. Okay. So now this is one of the films that we chose or we put in line for not the greatest. That being said, there's stuff in here that works very well.
Yeah.
It embraces the Scottish culture, sort of.
It's a little, music hall, but sure.
A little. It is beautiful.
Oh, lovely. God, the landscape.
Yeah, the opening, the woods. It's like, I just sat there feeling so sorry for all of the animators and artists. It's like, no, okay, now that you've finished doing that tree, we need about 3,000 more. Can you stay for the weekend? And the changes of light, Merida's hair, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I gotta say, the character design in this film in general, I really like. Although all the guys, except for I think one, are pretty ugly.
The guys are way more cartoon looking.
Yeah.
I mean,
but you see Merida and that hair, like you instantly know who she is. It's like, oh, she's trouble. Oh, yep, you're gonna have. Yep, no. And I feel bad away for Eleanor because it's pretty obvious that she didn't inherit much of anything from Eleanor. Neither did the boys. It's just like all of the genes from her side. Just like, I whatever they want to do is fine with us.
Yeah.
So some things work very well.
Yeah, I think so. I again, like you say, visually it's just gorgeous. The way water works when she goes up to the fire falls to drink from the fire falls. So I remember thinking, okay, you're a princess. You're the next in line. It's a little irresponsible, free climbing up what is effectively El Capitan. But it looks amazing. And yes, the people and the movement. You can really tell Pixar really mastered making human beings look good.
Yes, finally.
Which, as we've talked about, took them a little while.
Yeah, and the ones here are more cartoonish, and they'll get even better, even on the Disney side when we get films like Tangled. The Tangled characters, there are plenty of just regular-looking people, very nice-looking people, and cartoonish-looking people. They all work fine. And if they'd been able to do that for the Toy Story films, it would have made things a little easier, but whatever.
Yeah.
It's really obvious from the start. As soon as we meet the parents, it's like, oh yeah, we know whose side she takes after. I love Fergus. That's Billy Connolly.
Billy Connolly, who just knocks it out of the park.
He does.
He is so much fun and very believable, and you like him right away.
Oh yeah.
And this is a guy who you really believe. Oh, a bear ate his leg.
And he's just pissed. That's all.
Yeah, he's not upset. He's not traumatized. He just now hates all bears.
Yeah, which is, to be fair, understandable.
Yeah.
And it's a bit, perhaps a bit stereotypical, but it is kind of embracing a lot of what the Scots see as their history, because it seems like in the past, the only thing that really united the Scots was somebody else showing up that they all decided they hated more.
There was a line in a Neil Gaiman novel, I think it's Good Omens, where he refers to, the Scots even took time from battling their mortal enemy, the Scots. I'm sorry, Scotland, you're a great country. We love you. The history of Scotland is not the most peaceful. There was a lot of interclan warfare, and it's true. And they talk about, by the way, I kind of like this because they don't really come out and say it, but they talk about how they united against a common foe. Now, that could be one of two things. That could either be Rome, although by that point, probably not. By the 12th century, Rome, or it's more likely the Vikings.
Okay.
Because they even mentioned that. They mention, I think it's young MacGuffin who slew like 2,000 Vikings.
Yeah. The other thing, too, for historical humor, Hadrian's Wall, which is literally a wall that was meant to cut off the lower part of the UK, which in this case is Britain, England, if you will, from Scotland, was not erected by the Scots. It was erected by the Romans to keep the Scots in.
Yeah.
It's like we can't stop them. Maybe we can keep them inside.
These people are crazy. They're painting their faces blue and they're fighting naked. Come on.
Yeah, and the Scots apparently it's just like forget it. Just let them do whatever they're going to do. I've been to Scotland twice. I am Scottish. I love the Scottish people. They're a hell of a lot of fun. I can't drink nearly enough to be there for very long. And I like haggis. I've had it. I had it for breakfast. I really like it. A lot of people won't even touch it, especially when they find out what's in it. I love Scotland. I would move there if I could. But this movie, I mean,
it kind of nails
true.
some of their history. And again, it nails some of the character in that, yes, they can be hot-tempered and a bit aggressive, but they're also, genuinely nice people, and they love each other, and you can tell they even make that point. While the clan chiefs, scuffle and fight, deep down they're incredibly loyal to each other.
Right. Well, at least one of them saved Fergus's life. Of course, he says, "Well, I was aiming for somebody else."
Well, yeah, but
I was aiming for you.
But he's kidding,
right?
And they all laugh at that. Yeah, I gotta say, for a Scottish movie, how can the little boys not like haggis? I mean, they're actually kind of down on haggis in this movie.
Well, I don't remember you liking it.
I thought it was okay, but apparently I didn't have very good haggis. I had cafeteria haggis.
Yeah, the stuff we had, it was just bland. The stuff that I had later, I just adored it. Like the first day we were in Scotland.
Again. I would love to try it.
I went and had it for lunch, and I'm like, oh, this is good. Then they offered it, and the Scots don't eat it for breakfast. That's not a thing. But they had it in the buffet, so I was like, hell yeah, I'll eat it. And I must have had it like 5 times, and we're only in Edinburgh for like 2.5 days. But I adore it. And I like Scotch. So Scotch makes perfect sense, because especially the peaty, smoky stuff. The first time I had the really peaty stuff, I was like, oh, I get it. They were cold and miserable. That's why they made this.
It is a bit damp. I got to say, the Scotland we see in this movie, remarkably sunny.
Yeah.
For an awful lot of the time. I'm sure it is at some points, but not in our experience.
No.
There's some odd history stuff in this, too, where they talk about the story that they bring up, the myth of the kingdom being divided into 4 pieces. That's French. There was a French king who chopped up... that's that whole... line everyone ever studied Latin ever learned, all Gaul was divided into 4 parts. I don't know if that happened in Scotland. I don't think so. I think Scotland was divided into 340 parts.
Well, interestingly, the Scots and the French have a very long and deep friendship, and part of the reason is because they both hate the English.
That would do it.
Also, I think it's interesting, the Scottish symbol is the unicorn. Which is like that, because it's not an animal you usually equate with them, but like the symbol of the UK is the lion and the unicorn, and the lion is Britain and the unicorn is Scotland, which is okay. Not a bear.
Not a bear. And we don't run into any unicorns. It's funny, the supernatural part of this movie is sort of more background. You have will-o-wisps, which are part of Scottish folklore. It's an interesting thing is the will-o-wisps are not necessarily good things.
No.
They are usually... Now, they're sort of... They can be both. Traditionally, they lead strangers either to treasure or death.
Right.
So will-o-wisps, by the way, are a real thing. They are a phenomenon found in bogs and swamps caused by luminescent phosphorescent gas.
I sometimes get luminescent phosphorescent gas.
God, what have you been eating?
Kind of doesn't matter. Haggis. That's where they first came from. I also, you mentioned earlier that we get to keep the parents. I love the relationship between Fergus and Merida.
Oh, it is so sweet, because she's obviously Daddy's girl.
Totally, and he's so proud of her. Yep. And he's so obvious that he's also, he's a man boy. I get it, but he's like, I'm the king. But every time Eleanor looks over, it's like, oh, this is great. Of course, dear, that's what I'm gonna do.
But Eleanor is so cool. Also, at times when all the guys are fighting, and she just stands up. And starts walking, and as each step she takes, the fighting gets quieter and quieter. And somehow, I don't know how she did this, she drags 4 grown men by their ears at the same time.
Yeah. I was like, how many arms do you have?
But it's clear everyone respects her. They're not. Yeah. They may like Fergus better, But she is a much more commanding presence.
She is, because he's one of them, right? Yeah. They're all boys, and they're all into roughhousing. And
they want to fight, they want to drink, they want to play games, and that's why, that is actually one of my problems with the narrative.
Yeah. And there's a few of them. Let's start off with this one.
Yeah, the major conflict in this movie is between Merida and her mother. Merida wants to be a free spirit. She wants to do whatever she wants, basically. She has a point in that she doesn't like the idea that her fate is decided by others, except it's the 12th century and she is a girl. And I'm sorry, that's what happened. You didn't really get a lot of choice if you were a woman.
No, and I don't think even courtly love was a thing yet. Most marriages were arranged.
Courtly love was coming up mostly in the English around the 12th and 13th century, but nobody took it seriously. I mean, it was all supposed to be in books. And, let's face it, there wasn't a lot of reading. But
I don't think there are any books in Scotland in this movie.
I can't remember. I thought someone kicked over a scroll or something, but...
that's just mean. It's just these guys don't have time for reading. They don't care.
These characters certainly don't. But, okay, you can sort of understand it. And, this is, again, it's a very... Disney sort of thing, I want to live on land and have legs, and I don't want to just marry Gaston. I want to have adventures. And it's like
I don't want to marry a prince. Yeah, whatever.
And this is sort of like that, except in this case, Merida is actually kind of annoying that way. It's like, I see. You don't mind having the privileges of being a princess, but you don't want the responsibility. She has a job.
She does, but what privileges is she enjoying?
Well, she gets to live indoors. I mean, it's the 12th century. What do you want? She has a great horse. Angus.
She does. Angus is one of a long line of Disney horses.
He's a Shire, by the way. They're a real breed of Scottish horse, and they can get up to over 17 hands in height. They are big monsters.
They also tend to be very docile.
They're believe it or not.
The big ones, the Clydesdales, tend to be actually pretty whatever.
Yeah, I mean, she gets nice clothing. She doesn't have to go and, hunt wild haggis or...
Well, but she would. That's the thing. So, all right, I understand your view of this, and I definitely see it as a historical thing. Like, this is not representing history at all. But how much of the film really is?
No.
That being said, if you want to look at it as a plain Disney film, she's kind of young to be thrust into the hands of any of the suitors they bring her. Because she looks to me to be 3, 4, 5 years younger than them, and she's portrayed as being kind of 13, 14-ish.
I think she's supposed to be 16, but she's one of the first ones as a teenager. But please remember, Snow White was 13.
Not in the movie, she wasn't.
Yeah, in the story, she is.
Yeah, I get that. That's Romeo and Juliet, 13 and 14 or whatever.
Yeah,
so whatever.
Basically, a woman was of marriageable age after she had her first period.
But this is all made up.
Yeah,
and it's using the history as literally window dressing. That's all it's doing. It's setting up a bunch of constrictions. So like, we can't do this, we can do that, we can do this. Although then it breaks some of them, and that's what gets into some of my issues. So one of them being, why is there an answering machine?
Oh, yes. The witch has basically an answering machine. That's a tad anachronistic. And never mind the magic. Magic is fine. But yeah, she has a cauldron that's an answering machine.
Oh, it threw me right out of the film when I first saw it.
It's too jarring, because that's really the only thing.
Well... Yeah, that's anachronistic. Yeah, I agree. Although, thankfully, I didn't see the goddamn pizza truck, but whatever.
Yeah.
The Witch, I think, is one of my first big problems.
Yeah.
The whole part with Merida that you're saying didn't bother me as much. I don't disagree with you. It just, that part didn't bother me.
Okay.
But The Witch does not work at all. There's no precedent for her. Like, there's no reason to believe there's going to be a witch or that witchcraft is a thing. It's just literally, oh, look, wisps. I'll go to see where they go because I remember one when I was little. This time, oh, it happens to bring me to a woodcarver's cottage. And, oh, look, she can help me. And here's the thing. when she gets there, and there's this witch who's pretending not to be one, because it turns out the reason she's a terrible witch is the only power she has is to turn any one thing into a bear.
Well, technically she turns 4 things into a bear in this movie, but yes,
well, wood.
That's her whole thing.
She turns wood into bears. Yeah. She turns people into bears. That's all she can do. So she's pretending not to be one so that she can hide in the woods and sell wood crafts.
Yeah, that part is never explained. Is she afraid of persecution? The only thing she says is fewer dissatisfied customers.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't know, but she comes out of nowhere. There's no hint that this is going to be a thing at all. And then Merida says, I'm here, I want a spell to change my fate. She doesn't say her mother. She says change her fate.
She says both.
She says change her fate twice. And even if she did mention her mother, I don't feel it's in her character to choose changing her mother over doing something herself. She's very independent. Why doesn't she say, I need a spell to get me out of this. I want to become something better. I want to become something that doesn't require me to do this. As opposed to, well, I'm going to make my mom change.
I think that, I don't know, I think you're overcomplicating. I think she has a very basic impulse of a lot of teenagers. She wants her mother to listen to her and to see things from her perspective, to change her mind. It doesn't sound nearly as drastic, because you don't get the feeling she doesn't hate her life or hate her parents. She just wants them to listen. She feels, it's pretty clear she feels she doesn't really get heard by her mother. Her mother has a very clear vision of who she's supposed to be and doesn't really brook any change to that.
And this is so rare an occurrence for teenagers that I'm wondering if any of them could understand. Oh, you know.
It's true. The witch, also the pacing with the witch, the whole scene is so frenetic, so fast.
Yeah.
And just so many sight gags, one after another.
Yeah.
There are fast-paced segments of the movie, but they sort of draw back and let you take them in, or they go on for long enough that they don't feel as rushed. It just feels like the witch is a plot device. You never get the feeling of her as a character, and that's a little unusual in a Pixar movie, because usually even the little throwaway characters have personality.
Right. And she's not even a MacGuffin, right?
No, we've already got the Lord and Young MacGuffin. Yeah.
Yeah, she just feels. For me, my note was she feels totally contrived. And then later, when Merida comes back, it's like, oh no, I've changed my mother into bear. Let's go see the witch. She's left.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with our 2 favorites, Stuff and Reasons.
Yeah, it's pretty much. Oh, she's left because otherwise. I keep thinking of Daffy Duck. Well, I better get climbing this thing, or we ain't going to have any picture.
Yeah. It's convenient. It's just convenient. And there's other things that happen that are just convenient. But to me, I was enjoying the film well enough the first time I saw it. Although it is leaning much more heavily on comedy than most of Pixar films. Until we get to the witch. And then I'm just like, wait, what? What is this? Why is this? She just doesn't feel... She doesn't feel like she fits into this film at all. Like, there's no other sense of magic in this film except her. And the wisps, which we find out are connected to her anyway.
There's a little bit. There's also Mordu.
But he's connected to her.
True.
So, like, the only magic is her, and they don't even know Mordu has anything to do with this story that comes up, which, Eleanor tells her daughter to say, basically, hey, you got to do this, because the only reason we're together is because all these people did this stuff, except for this one selfish guy who, it turns out, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Magic doesn't feel a part of this land except for her. It felt very much... If you take this exit, this is the last exit before magic, and that's where you are. So I didn't.
Okay,
the witch just is a problem.
The witch is a problem. Then we come to what is the major chunk of the narrative, which is once Eleanor's turned into a bear, and Merida has to get her out of the castle because otherwise Dad is going to kill her.
Right.
Because that's his instinct to do with every bear.
Right.
Not to mention the fact, honestly, if you find a full-grown bear in your house or your castle, it's not unreasonable to say, I think we should kill it. That's fair.
How it got up there, we'll never know. Yeah. Past all the guards and past whatever.
But we see that later. But then they spend a fairly long if somewhat rushed, stretch in the woods together. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that's doing there. That was
it's to show Merida the true meaning of being a bear.
I mean, some of it, again, it looks wonderful. I love little bits like when Eleanor is still trying to be ladylike as a bear, and like trying to, like, in effect, hold her pinky up while she eats, or trying to carve things. She won't just eat whole salmon like a bear would. But what's going on? The whole idea is this entire experience is what resolves the tension between them, and I don't see how it does.
Well, until then, she had not known fish. Because there are those scenes where she's teaching her mother how to catch salmon.
Yeah.
And you might think this is ridiculous, but I am perfectly willing to believe that if Merida needs to catch fish, she doesn't even need the bow. She can just catch salmon.
We see her do that. She actually grabs one out of the water just with her hands.
The only thing I can see that makes sense is that of all the characters in this film, and they talk a little bit about the land and the people in the beginning of the film, of all the characters in the film, the only character that doesn't seem to have any connection to the land at all is Eleanor.
Oh, I don't think that's right.
It is. She is totally about rules. She is totally about how she comports herself. She's totally about not fighting. She doesn't know anything about hunting or fishing. She doesn't know the berries she found are poisonous. She knows nothing about living outside the castle.
Well, again, I think that's not true. We see that earlier in the movie, that she's out and about, like ending up dealing with the Mordu the first time. But also, that's the other thing that she's really interested in, is keeping the kingdom together. This isn't about just following rules. She's worried that the whole kingdom is going to fall into civil war. That's why she wants Merida to get married. It's not simply because that's what a princess does. It's because if you don't, people are going to die. It's like, I want you to get married to cement the peace. She is the only one who is genuinely committed, not just to peace, but civilized behavior.
But she's committed to it to the point where she's ignoring the wild side of her people and the land.
That's true.
The only reason I can see that this whole experience is happening. And it is true. And I don't know if she grew up that way or she walked away from that side of her to become who she is. And I'm not saying she's totally wrong, but she's ignoring something that is important to everybody else in the film. And that's the only reason I can see that learning to be a bear makes any sense.
That part just doesn't work for me.
I don't think it works.
I think I guess I can see where you're going. I thought it was more of seeing how competent Merida was on her own, and that there were things that Merida knew that she didn't. And it gave her a different kind of respect for Merida. She didn't just see her as wild and destructive. She saw she could actually take care of herself, and she understood the natural world better than Eleanor did. I could see that somewhat. But again, Eleanor isn't just, I think we should follow the rules because we should follow the rules. Eleanor wants to follow the rules so that the kingdom stays together and that people aren't plunged into warfare. That's not unreasonable. She may go overboard. Because she obviously has a very clear picture of the way things are supposed to be. And because she's fighting a hell of an uphill battle. Because if you notice, there's just her.
I know, but all she needs is her look, and that's enough.
Yeah, but imagine how hard she's had to work to get to that point.
That may be, but she's plus 10 versus Scots.
Very high charisma versus Scotsman, yes.
I think that what needs to happen, and doesn't really, is that we need to be given a clue that the mother realizes the worth of the things that Merida loves. It's not that what Merida loves should take precedent, but she needs to understand that these things are important and why they're important. Having a strong queen is not a bad thing at all, and one who can not only take care of herself, but can take care of the land. Honestly, if Fergus died, I don't know if she'd be able to control things the way she does, because her ways, she's walked away from so much of what the other people are like. And I'm not saying that she can't rule and she isn't the one really pulling the strings, because Fergus would be fine just wrestling all day. But I think that having Merida with those skills and that capable is going to make for a stronger union. And that she needs to see that her hunting skills, her riding skills, all the things that are important to all these guys are also important. I'm not saying that what Eleanor brings to the table isn't, but I think that what she's supposed to do is realize the importance of what Merida loves. How that comes out in Salmon, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. I could see that if they had done something different, if they had done anything else to show that, okay, this is about valuing what Merida values, and realizes she's not frivolous. She's not. She is in touch with the kingdom in a different way.
Right.
That doesn't come across.
No.
And I think it could. I think they wouldn't have had to try very hard. But again, it's still fun to look at. It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Then what about the big speech Merida makes? When they're trying to sneak back in the castle, and as a distraction, she gets up and starts talking about who she wants to choose as a suitor. And basically she makes an appeal, which is a tad out of... You're
going to have to just let go of the history. You're just going to have to.
Yeah. It's a good argument. She says, why don't we let our hearts decide? Why don't we see who we actually want to marry, as opposed to who being forced into it? Right. Again, not so much history, but that kind of defeats the whole reason they're there. They're there because a marriage would cement peace.
Right.
Now, again, this is something I wish they'd emphasized a little more. She points out they don't need the marriage. They already respect each other. They're already loyal to each other. The marriage is icing. I don't think that they emphasize that properly.
Well, my feeling was that there was a tiny, itty-bitty, if you look real hard and squint and say the alphabet backwards kind of way of them pointing a finger at LGBTQ stuff.
How do you mean?
So they actually said you should be allowed to love the person you love, which is...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think I vaguely remember reading something about the idea that Merida may in fact not be straight. There is no indication to this film except for that speech. But the feeling of many fans was that Merida does not end up marrying anybody because she's not interested in the guys. And to be fair, with what she has to choose from, I don't really blame her.
I don't know. Young MacGuffin seemed nice if you could understand what he was saying.
Yeah, and he can crush things with his mighty thews.
Young MacDonald was just sort of irritating, and Dimwell, yikes.
Dingwall, yeah.
Dingwall, yeah.
Do you think she'll mind being called Dingwall? Oh, well.
I like that. You want to be Lady Dingwall.
And he's so vile, but I absolutely of the part where old Dingwall there, Master Dingwall, just, take a look at this! And he turns around and lifts the flap and just shows his nethers. Oh my God! And it's like, that's a very un-Disney Pixar thing to do, but I would sit down for at least one drink with Dingwall. He seems to be fun.
Yeah, there's also, a kind of surprising part is when they're all climbing, all the men get trapped on top of the tower, and then it's implied they make a rope by tying all their kilts together, and they walk back into the castle, and you can tell they're all naked below the waist.
Well, you can tell because you see all their bums.
Yes, you see all these butts. You don't see butts in Disney films. I see why this was PG.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, in that speech, obviously, it's really cue carded by Mom as the bear, and it works, which is fine because that's where we see them cementing together. But so the whole deal, if you haven't seen the film, is the spell that has been that turns Eleanor into a bear. The witch implies, by the way, I forgot to tell you, the only way you can reverse the spell is if you bring together what was torn apart.
Mend what was torn apart.
Yeah.
Look inside.
What is that thing? So the thing that's actually torn apart and mended, what is it?
It's a tapestry. Well,
is it?
Literally. What do you mean?
Is it? I don't know. I don't know why the spell turns back at the last second, and I don't think the audience does either. Because
I see what you mean. Yeah, the tapestry I think was a distraction. I think the idea is what turns her back is healing the tear in their relationship.
Yeah, which she did half an hour before the end of the film.
Pretty much, except I do have to say, it's in that final speech when she thinks she's lost her mother, or is about to, and that it's the first time she apologizes and says, because all through it, once her mom's a bear, she keeps saying, it's not my fault, when it is entirely her fault. And finally, she takes responsibility at the end and says, this is my fault. This is all my fault. I did this. I'm so sorry. That's what heals the tear.
I guess.
That's the closest I can get. And quite honestly, I had to do all the work because the movie does not really make it clear.
No, it doesn't. This film is fractured in a number of ways. One of them is a very important real-life way, and this would sadly become a trend with Disney and Pixar. This is one of Disney's, hey, let's fire the director midway through the films. And the woman who started directing it was fired partway through. She was going to be the first woman who had directed a Pixar film, and then she wasn't because they got rid of her. And I don't know. I haven't read far enough into it to find out if her story was more cohesive and the person who came in to replace her messed it up, or what was going on. But it feels like a film that's made by more than one director.
It does. It does. And you can, some points, I'd swear you can see where it changes. I think like when they head out into the woods, it's like, wait, did we walk into another movie?
Yeah, and it's the comedy in this film. I laugh a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I like the characters. I love the Scots. They're hilarious. All of the different clans have their ways, and they're fun in different ways. But it's so comedy heavy that when we get to the heavy parts, I kind of have trouble taking it seriously because they don't like the fish scene is one of the only scenes that's serious for any length of time, and we sit there wondering why we need to learn what it is to be a bear.
Yeah.
I mean, is Baloo going to show up?
No, of course not. Don't be silly. He lives in India.
Oh, right.
But it's true. The emotional weight isn't earned.
No.
As I've said before, I think we both said this, the really good Pixar movies are the ones that make you cry. And there is a moment you are supposed to cry in this movie.
Yeah.
When Merida is sobbing because she thinks her mother is a bear forever.
Right.
And nope. Because you don't buy it. I mean, you understand, sure, narratively, yeah, I see where it's coming from. They haven't built up the emotional weight for it. Yeah, it's not effective enough.
And I don't think... I was going to say, I don't think it has anything to do with the performances. I mean, it's Emma Thompson.
Yeah, come on.
I pretty much never have a problem with Emma Thompson.
Emma Thompson's great in this. All of the voice acting is superb in this.
But it's an example of amazing art and a second-rate story.
Yeah. The story and the character development is too thin.
Yeah.
And there are some things like, let me ask you something. What do you think of the little boys, the triplets?
They're hilarious. They don't serve any purpose except they're fun, but they don't. It's like, oh, well, they get to do whatever they want to do. Okay, well, I guess we're going to watch them doing whatever they want to do. They like to eat, so they steal food. Yeah, they turn into bears. Their characters do not change at all.
Nope.
They're like, we're bears, whatever. I like them, but they're useless as characters.
They aren't characters. They're plot devices, and you can tell because they never speak.
Nope.
They don't get any lines, and this is not because they're not old enough to speak. These are kids, obviously. What are they, 5, 6? They should be able to talk.
They plot.
Yeah.
If they're old enough to plot, they're old enough to speak.
They come up with stuff. They are just narrative devices. They aren't people. They aren't characters. And honestly, I think that whole destruction and making mischief and basically being 3 little Dennis the Menaces gets old. I get pretty tired of them in this movie. Quite honestly, at the end when we see they've gotten on one of the boats and they're sailing off, it's like, why are you going after them? Let them go, man. Come on.
I didn't get tired of it. I could see why somebody would. It's fine. But they literally don't bring anything but laughs to the film.
Yeah.
And you might even say larfs. I want to quickly backpedal a bit before we get totally to the end. So we're talking about what's going to bring, what was rent apart and that needs to be put back together. There's a third thing we haven't even brought up. And that is Mordu. So spoiler, if you haven't seen the film, this is giving something away. Mordu. So this is horrible black bear. It is the ugliest, oldest, scraggliest, nasty bear you ever saw because it's
got
bald.
Old weapons embedded in its flesh.
The poor thing is probably in constant pain. I don't blame it for being
one
angry.
Eye, yeah.
Fergus's leg was probably the best meal it had had in decades. We find out that this is another dissatisfied customer from the witch, that he had come to her and saying, hey, I want to be, he's the one of the four brothers, and he decided he wanted to be the Wurra brother, so hey, make me as strong as 10 men, and the best way to do this is turn you into a bear. And he's been a bear ever since, and we get the impression that he's been a bear for a really long time. Magically long time.
Well, they say it's an ancient king, so that could be anything, yeah.
So when they finally drop the stone of, I don't know, of precedent on the bear and kill Mordu, what we see is his spirit rise and give a nod to thanks to Merida. So part of the film could have been, oh, you're not bringing back the relationship between your mother and yourself. That's sure, we see that. No, you're reuniting the four brothers again because they had been torn apart by his, greed and whatever. And then, strangely, his spirit turns into a wisp, leading us to believe that every wisp is a dissatisfied customer that had been turned into a bear.
Wow, which means she's been doing this a lot.
Yeah, but it's like there's all these things that just make you go, oh, maybe that's it. Oh, maybe it's this. And then they throw in the tapestry. It's like, why would the tapestry, why would that matter? It's a symbol. Okay, I get it. But the actual cloth, she's on the horse, running to catch up with her mom being killed.
She's sewing on horseback. I don't think so.
And somehow she keeps the three bears, on Angus, who somehow deals with this because, whatever. I kind of wonder. I can't tell if I want Mordu to be part of this or not. I almost don't. He's almost like this other plot.
I think he was superfluous. Honestly, I don't think he was necessary at all. They could have had something else, a natural disaster, anything. But Mordu is like, he's, again, another movie.
It's like maybe justification for the witch. I don't know. But it's just kind of... So I would like to ask one other question. I always said I had just one, but I like. There's a lot of fracturing going on. There's characters we like. There's visuals we love. There's plot elements we do care for. There's fish. How would we fix this? What would we do to make this work?
Well, I think I would remove the Mordu subplot. If you want, obviously you have to have some way to turn Eleanor into a bear because that's central to the plot.
I guess.
Yeah. There must be a way. Merida could have found an old altar or something. You didn't need necessarily the witch. She could have found a druid. Something like that.
Somebody who painted themselves blue and ran naked through the woods.
Sure.
Oh, woe is me. Woe is me.
You're fired. Yeah. I am not sure how I would fix it. How would you fix it?
Certainly taking some of the steps you did, you really want to tighten up the story, which admittedly is a story we're going to see again, because it's not entirely unlike Coco. Really, there's no bears in Coco, but the whole I don't want to do what the family wants me to do. The nice thing about that is he doesn't have to be king.
It's not like what his choice will harm people.
No, Moana ends up being the same thing. I don't want to be queen. Or to be fair, it's like I don't mind being queen, but I want to leave the island. It's like, okay, that she actually has a point though.
yeah, she kind of does.
I don't know. I'd hate to think it's like, well, we're just going to do the same story, but it's in Scotland. There needs to be, there has to be something happen to the mother that's the cause of Merida. Like, she has to have caused something. I don't know if it needs to be a bear. I know the bears become central to the plot because bears, but whatever. But it needs to be there needs to be a lot of stuff cut out, and there needs to be a lot of tightening of the strings.
I think we needed to see more about Eleanor. I think we should have seen a little more from her perspective. Why was she so obsessed with the rules? I'm guessing that it's about peace. We don't really know.
No. She's not a character like Merida where you can look at her and go, I get her. Eleanor has a different depth to her. And it's not a depth you could just see in a character design or even some simple actions. There probably was something very important that she did. We don't know. Is she related to those 4 guys that were princes? Probably, I guess. But
we don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's that. And also, her change of heart at the end is awfully fast and very complete.
Yeah.
I mean, she's wearing her hair down. She's like, okay, sure, you don't have to marry anybody.
Well, it's just like when her mind turns into the mind of the bear, it's just convenience. It's like, oh, we need this now, so she does it. It's not like, oh, it's sunset. No, because the next time she turns into a bear, it's almost sunrise. So it's literally random.
I did like the visual of the way the bear's eyes would change.
Sure.
When she would flick back and forth between human and bear. I thought visually that was cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Maybe we should wrap up. Do you have, unless there's any other?
Nope. I think that's really about it.
Yeah, we have to let out the surprise. Yeah. So you, we'll pause first. The roundup just makes my life easier. Max, I know you're hosting and I'm taking over your part, but so you saw this when it came out because you see all Pixar films.
I did.
How did you feel about it when it came out?
I actually really didn't like it. I have to say, watching it a second time, I liked it better. Mainly, I think, because my expectations were a lot lower. But Brave was coming off a string of really good Pixar movies. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, they're going to do a princess movie. This is going to be really interesting. And, oh, Scotland, that's cool. And, wow, look, the people look good. The trailer, which, by the way, not one frame of the teaser is in the movie. But I ended up being pretty disappointed because it is fragmented. But I have to say, this is an odd one because we're talking about the highs and lows, the best and the worst. I don't think this is the worst of Pixar. I think this one, and honestly, I think this is kind of why it's disappointing. This one is And I don't expect from Pixar.
No.
There are things in it to really like. There are really good things. It just doesn't get there.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's same thing. It was sort of like when I heard Ridley Scott was going to be doing a fantasy film, because Ridley Scott did one of my favorite films ever, Blade Runner, and that was kind of like, hey, you didn't know cyberpunk existed, here's all of it. And I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. What, he's going to do a fantasy film? I am still, but I was a big D&D nerd when I heard this. I was like, oh, he's going to take on fantasy like nobody else. Oh, Tom Cruise in a mini dress. Oh,
that was legend, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Tim Curry in a costume that will cripple him.
And the sad part, the only part you actually see that is Tim Curry is his tongue.
Yeah,
That's literally all that you see of Tim Curry. Yeah. And this film was the same way. It's like, oh, Pixar's going to do a fantasy film, and like you said, it's in Scotland, which is great. And the princess thing, I don't give a crap about princesses. We've seen a ton of princesses. I could do without there ever being another freaking princess film, but whatever. And it is gorgeous. I have the Art of book. Get the Art of book if you like to look at this stuff. It is beautiful. I like the character designs. Some of them are a little cartoony. They work great. The people portraying the characters are a lot of fun. Parts of it are really funny. But the story just doesn't. It doesn't hold together.
It doesn't hold together. You have to do too much of the work.
And I felt like it's like you can feel yourself being pulled up the story by the rope toe, and then suddenly you can't hold on any longer, and you're left to go down the bunny hill by yourself. That was a weird analogy.
That was interesting, but oddly appropriate in some strange way.
So it's I still would put it in the quote unquote worst of Pixar, just because. You spend that much money, you put that much work, it really is the bottom end of the pile. I don't think it's anywhere near the bottom of the bottom of the pile.
It ain't Cars 2.
No. And to be fair, even still, there's a lot of studios that did a lot worse than this.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Oh, yeah. There's plenty. You can definitely point at stuff that is worse. But I'm sorry, this is Pixar, and they set the bar really high.
Yeah. And when they do that, they make things that we want to see. Like, what are we going to see next week?
Next week, we're going to see, I'll just say it, one of my favorite Pixar films, Inside Out. Because it's like Pixar, this is when I like them. It's when they say, okay, hold my beer. First we're going to do a movie where we make the audience cry in the first 10 minutes, like Up. Now, we're going to make a movie about sentient toys that should be a nightmare but isn't. Now, we're going to make a movie that takes place inside an 11 or 12-year-old girl's head.
And one of the things inside that girl's head is Lewis Black.
Lewis Black, who, I am sorry, is one of the greatest casting choices in the history of film to make Lewis Black the voice of rage. Because that is what he is.
You know what I think, Max? I think every 11 or 12-year-old girl should have their own inner Lewis Black. I think it would somehow just make adolescence that much easier.
I think so. Certainly a lot more interesting.
So if you'd like your own inner Lewis Black, tune in next week.
This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.